Good evening, everybody. Welcome. It's 7 p.m. We're going to give everybody a couple of minutes to join our webinar, and then we will get started. So thank you and welcome. Okay, we're giving everybody a couple more minutes to arrive, and then we'll go over a few logistics for this evening. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. As people are entering, we'll just go over a few logistics. Good evening. My name is Beth Meyerhoff, and I'm the Director for Community Concerns for 33rd District PTA. And thank you so much for joining us tonight for our speaker series. If you missed any of the previous speakers, be sure to go to our 33rd District website to view the recordings of our past events. We wanted to share a few logistics about this Zoom presentation for tonight. We do have interpretation available, so please go to the bottom of the screen and click on the globe, and we have Spanish interpretation available. And if there's anyone having any issues with the Spanish, please let us know in the Q&A box, please. And we want to thank Claudia Bravo, our interpreter, for interpreting for us tonight. And we also have a Spanish version of the PowerPoint on our 33rd District website if you would like to follow along on that PowerPoint or refer to it later. And then this is a Zoom presentation. So as an attendee, you can hear the presentation, but you will not be able to unmute. So please ask any questions you have in the Q&A, and the panelists will review the questions and ask the questions after the presentation. This session is being recorded and will also be streamed via Facebook Live. And at the end of the survey, at the end of the presentation, we'll have a brief survey. So please take a moment to complete the survey. We really value and appreciate and read all of your comments, and it helps us provide programs that meet your needs and better serve you as our PTA members. So joining us tonight, we have Raymer Flynn, the Director of Programs, Kathy Haley, Director of Health, Cindy Ellenberg, our 33rd District PTA President. As I mentioned, Claudia Bravo, our interpreter, and I'd like to introduce Marcy Cottrell, our Director of Education, who will introduce our guest speaker.
So thank you for joining us tonight. We have one speaker tonight who will speak for about 45 minutes, followed by an opportunity to ask questions. We are proud to have Katie Hurley with us tonight. Katie is a child and adolescent psychotherapist in El Segundo and the author of 4 books, including the award-winning No More Mean Girls. A Year of Positive Thinking for Teens is her latest release, and I'd like to turn it over to Katie now.
All right. Hello, everybody. Hold on. I'm sharing my screen. Look at that. Okay. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming out and hanging out with me tonight. I know these are long days. They shouldn't be, but they are, right? So I always appreciate when people Zoom in to see me. I can't wait till I can come back and see you in person someday, but for tonight, we'll have to do Zoom like we do all the time, all day, every day. So I want to tell you a little story before I get started because I love stories. So I want to tell you a story about a girl who was about 15 years old when she first realized that something was different, but she didn't really know what it was. She was a high achieving student, worked really, really hard, was always trying to measure up to some sort of impossible standards that perhaps she set for herself. She was athletic. She played on all kinds of teams. She loved sports. She had friends. From the outside looking in, it seemed like everything was great. But at night, she would just lie awake, worrying and thinking and overthinking and rethinking everything that she did throughout the day. And she would think about her future, and she would think about the past, and she would think about interactions with friends and overthink those interactions with friends. Is this resonating with anyone yet? And anyway, at some point, she finally said to her parents, there's something wrong with me. Like, I'm always thinking about everything way too much. I feel like I'm just always a little more stressed than all my friends. I don't get it. And they said, no, 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 you're great. You do great in school. You're an athlete. You have friends. You're doing great. Don't worry so much. You're going to be fine. You're going to have a great future. And so she went along and got through high school and went off to Boston College. And here's the plot twist you've all been waiting for. That girl was me. And off at Boston College studying psychology, I took a course that focused a lot on positive psychology. And I had never heard of it and I didn't know anything about it. I just knew that I wanted to one day go back and help other teenagers and young kids know that A, it's okay if you worry, and B, there's something that you can do about it. And in that class, I listened and listened and listened and engaged and just was blown away by everything I was learning. And through the course of that class, I started to develop my own little systems of what would later become to known as self-talk. And I started sort of cheerleading myself my way through things. So when I would worry, I would give myself a little cheer and say, you can do this. You've done this before. Exams are just exams. You can get through it. And anyway, long story short, here I am today, not so worried anymore, very much in control of all those feelings. But way back when, in yesteryear, we'll call it, in the 80s and 90s, people didn't talk about anxiety. They didn't talk about depression. They didn't really know what those things were. So when my parents sort of dismissed and said, no, 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 you're great, stop worrying so much, it wasn't that they weren't good parents. It was that they really did think I was doing great. And they really didn't think there was anything for me to worry about. And so they didn't understand it. And in fact, when Prozac Nation came out, early 90s, I believe, that was the book that broke the mold and hit the shelves and just sort of blew everything up because nobody talked about this stuff. Well, here we are, fast forward to 2021, heading into the 1-year mark of this pandemic, and we know more. And when we know more, we do better. And I always say to parents, if you are worrying that your kids are stressed and anxious and having all kinds of issues right now, the best way to flip it in your brain is this. When we see the problem, we can solve the problem. So it's, as parents, we want to fix things. We want to soothe our kids. We don't want them to struggle, but they are going to struggle. And especially right now, they are going to struggle. So pre-pandemic, we know that about 7% of kids ages 3 to 17 were diagnosed with anxiety disorders. Those are the ones diagnosed. So there are a whole lot of kids that fly under the radar and don't get diagnosed either because they're not in therapy or they're anxious, but not anxious enough that they kind of get caught, right? That somebody sees that they need that kind of help. We know that about 3.2% of kids the same age group are diagnosed with depression. Again, those are only the ones who get diagnosed, so they're getting the help, so they're getting the diagnosis. 32% of teens will meet the criteria for an anxiety disorder by the time they turn 18. And we do know that with or without a diagnosis, many kids are struggling right now, largely in part to COVID-19. We also know that kids were struggling before the pandemic. Impossible achievement standards, all kinds of competition, all kinds of stuff can contribute to stress and anxiety. And so what we need to do is see the problem and solve the problem. Now, people are going to ask me, so I'm going to get this out of the way now. What are the numbers like right now? Because everybody's interested. So I always say we have to talk about a couple of things. One is the difference between surveys and scholarly studies. So we always want the science when we look at these things. And surveys can be done quickly, and studies can include surveys and can be churned out fairly quickly. I do believe we won't know the true impact of this pandemic for quite some time as we really study our entire population. We do know that surveys have been done in several countries, that in the UK, in China, in Italy, in the United States, we are seeing an increase in stress and anxiety among kids. Mental Health America, which is a nonprofit that provides resources for all kinds of mental health issues, did a survey recently and found that of 11 to 17-year-olds are reporting more anxiety and depression than any other age group, all the adults, anybody. 84% of their survey respondents said that they had moderate to severe anxiety right now. Challenge Success also ran some surveys recently in conjunction with NBC. Their data just came out about a week ago. They found that 56% of students say they are stressed about school right now, particularly girls and students of color. Challenge Success also found that 32% of students said that their mental health is a significant source of their stress. Right now, that number was at about 26% before the pandemic. So that's a fairly significant jump. And then Vanderbilt University wanted to find out what's happening with the parents, and 27% of parents surveyed through their survey said that they were having mental health issues that didn't exist before the pandemic. And of those 27%, 14% of their children were showing new or different emotional or behavioral challenges since the pandemic. So, we know that things are hard. I mean, that's a long way of saying that we know that things are hard. We know that kids and teens are struggling. We also know there are things that we can do to help them. So real quickly, before we head into solving the problem, people ask me all the time, well, what does stress and anxiety look like in kids? Stress and anxiety look a lot the same. So that's one thing to notice. So what's the difference? The difference is that if symptoms last 2 weeks or longer, and if they impact your child's ability to, get to their classes, even on Zoom, do their homework, hang out with other kids when it's allowed, do sort of their average daily things. Now, our average daily things are significantly different now than they were a year ago. They're going to get better. We're seeing some light at the end of the tunnel. I know some districts in our area are starting to go back. El Segundo just got their third graders back today, yay, and more are coming soon. So, it's hope is out there, it's happening. Kids are starting to reintegrate here and there into different things. But if your kids are not able to do those things and it's lasting 2 weeks or more, that's when you go from stress into anxiety. Also, stress tends to have, peaks and valleys. So triggers cause stress, but then they kind of even out. Anxiety is like a low buzz that's always there. It's just sort of always happening with some flare-ups. The biggest thing we see with anxiety and stress are psychosomatic complaints. And the biggest one of those is stomach aches. Frequent stomach aches are generally a red flag. People call me all the time and they say, well, do you think it's a food allergy? Or do you think it's an intolerance? Or do you think that I should go to this doctor or that doctor? And I say, it's stress, it's stress, it's stress, it's stress. Stress and anxiety cause stomach aches and headaches. Sometimes kids will report feeling dizzy. Sometimes kids will report having all kinds of muscle aches. Some of those aches and pains will seem completely absurd to you. And that's okay that you feel that way, because when your kid comes to you and says that their foot hurts all the time, you kind of want to be like, read a book, right? It's hard. It's hard to manage all the complaints that come in from kids. But one reason that kids have all these aches and pains is because when they're stressed and anxious, they are tensing their muscles all the time, their hands, their feet, their arms, their legs. And when you do that all the time to cope with the emotions running through your brain, you do get muscle aches. So those things are very real. Kids can and do stress themselves into aches and pains. Sleep disturbance is another big one. Kids today are underslept anyway, especially in America. We win the award for that one. We are woefully underslept, and I am always barking at everybody that they need more sleep. So I'll save that for a little bit later. But sleep disturbance, if you have a kid who usually is a pretty good sleeper, they fall asleep pretty well on their own, and suddenly they just can't fall asleep, or they're waking up all the time from nightmares, or they're just waking up too early, or they're just not logging enough hours. They can't fall asleep independently. That's usually a pretty good sign that something is going on. And there's a good reason for that, actually. And when you think about it, you've probably experienced it too. I know that I have anyway, and most people I know have had the same, but kids kind of do what adults do, which is they keep themselves busy all day long, even when they're stressed or anxious or depressed. So they do things, they play, they draw, they read, they do whatever it is that they like to do to get through the day. Nighttime falls, they put their heads back on the pillow, and bing, their brain is just shooting off all sorts of warning signs of all the things that they're worrying about and stressed about. And adults do this too. I mean, how many times have you gotten into bed, you're cozy, you get the lights just right, you open your book, you're ready to relax and fall asleep soon, and your brain just starts reminding you of all the things you didn't do or all the things you need to do tomorrow. Well, that's the same thing that happens to kids. And so a quiet brain is a good thing, but it's also an open door to all the thoughts you've been pushing aside all day long, which contributes to some of the sleep issues. Changing in eating habits are common. Usually kids don't eat, they stop eating as much, although some will overeat. Adults tend to be more of the overeaters and the stress eaters. I always say that in teenagers especially, but also in younger kids, anxiety is irritability. It's door slamming, it is anger, it is big, heavy sighs and eye rolls, and nobody can do anything right. And they are going to tell you about it every second of the day. Irritability that's prolonged, that's all day long, every day, is a symptom of a larger problem. Restlessness can happen a lot, especially with younger kids. They just can't sit still. They can't stop themselves from moving. They're just always wanting to do things because, again, they're trying to keep themselves busy so that they're not worrying about their feelings. Lack of focus can also be a sign of anxiety or stress. Right now, a lot of people are feeling very forgetful, me included. So, and I'm joking with my friends all the time that COVID brain just is making me forget things all the time, but that's actually real. Stress actually can cause memory loss. It can cause you to feel like your brain is just not working right, because when your brain gets clogged with stress, it's hard to access all the parts of your brain that you need to work properly so that you can remember things and you can focus on something and you can ask an appropriate follow-up question instead of saying something totally random when you're talking to a friend. So that is real, and that happens to adults and kids. Already mentioned muscle tension, fatigue, just extra fatigue, right? Like super tired all the time. Now, this is always a hard one too, because when kids are growing, they tend to be fatigued. So, I always say to parents, your kid's the best. I know you're going to question yourself at times. We all do. Everybody does. I question myself. We all do. But you do know your kid's the best. So if your kid just seems overly tired, or the eating habits are totally changing, or the restlessness is new and different, trust your gut that something's not right. People ask me all the time, well, when is the right time to get help? And here's the thing, there's no right time to get help. You will probably never regret jumping in and getting help early, but you might regret it if you wait too long. So why not get help early, right? If you don't need it for long, great. But don't wait too long. If you feel in your gut that something isn't right, it's always good to reach out for help. And then, kids might just lose interest in their things. And yes, even video games, even social media. I even have teenagers that I work with that have lost interest in Snap, believe it or not. So, when kids are really stressed and anxious and depressed and going through all these things, they do stop doing the things that they normally do. And that's usually a sign. I do believe we're going to have an awful lot of separation anxiety coming our way soon, even maybe in the coming weeks as kids start transitioning back to school in our area in a hybrid model. So that's just something to be aware of. If your child has struggled to separate from you, can't sleep without you, like laying on their floor at night, oh goodness, I know, I've been there. So if you're having any of those struggles, just keep it on your radar that this might be coming, because it is going to be really hard to reintegrate. It's going to be great and it's going to be exciting. And the more exciting we make it as the parents, the teachers are already excited. They can't wait to be there. So, the more parents can pump up kids to reintegrate, and we know the schools are taking all the safety measures they can, the better off your kids are going to be, because they are going to worry, because we're now asking them to do a very big thing, which is we've spent 11, almost 12 months telling them that the world isn't safe. And now we're about to say, hey, it's totally safe, go back. So that's a big ask. So we want to start planting the seeds of, that it is safe and it is good for them to do that. So I am an optimist by nature. I come by it naturally. My father was a huge optimist. I think it just sort of runs partially in through half my family, maybe. I always say I'm like a sarcastic optimist, but maybe that's because I was raised in New England. But here's the truth. The research consistently shows that optimism is good for our health. It's good for our physical health. It's good for our emotional health. It promotes success. When we believe in ourselves and when we believe that we can overcome challenges, we are more self-confident. And when we are more self-confident, we are less afraid. We are more willing to take healthy risks, and we are more likely to feel like we can solve problems and get through hard stuff. So it's actually a protective factor against anxiety and depression in kids and teens. And it's something that we need to promote. And I know it sounds simple, and we're going to talk about how not simple it actually is, because it's not simple. It's not easy to be an optimist. It's hard work and it takes daily practice. And sometimes you have to be a pessimist for a day to reset yourself and start over again. And that's okay. So I'm going to give you a quick positive psychology 101, because not all of you want to take a whole course in positive psychology tonight. And I totally get that. But Barbara Fredrickson down at UNC Chapel Hill is, I think she's the queen of positive psychology. I'm not sure that's her official title, but I love reading her research. And one of her theories is called the broaden and build theory. And what she's found through all of her research is that positive thoughts actually broaden your mind and open up your brain so that you can learn new skills and you can take in new information. So negative thinking sort of closes you up, right? And it makes your worldview seem a little bit smaller, where positive thinking broadens your worldview and gives you that ability to take in new information and try new things. She also is clear that positive thinking is not actually that simple, and that there is a specific ratio you have to use. So when you are having a negative thought, and we all have them, no one's happy all the time. Nobody's happy all the time. So we all have negative thoughts at times. That's okay. That's healthy. It's good even. But to counteract a negative thought, one negative thought, you got to use 3 positive thoughts. So it's a 3-to-1 ratio. And I teach kids this all the time, and teenagers, and they like to know the ratio. They like to know about their brains. One thing I love to teach kids and teens about is how their brains work, and how the way their brains work affects them day to day. And that 3-to-1 ratio, I can sometimes just do this and they'll change their thinking right through the screen if I just give them a little 3-to-1. So it takes 3 positive thoughts to outweigh 1 negative thought. Negative thoughts are heavy. We know this. When you have a negative thought, you know how heavy it feels and how it feels like, ugh, it's making me feel hopeless. We are not hopeless as human beings. We can create our own hope. So thought patterns are important. They play a significant role in how kids tackle obstacles. Negative thinkers tend to quit quickly and give up. They think that they can't get through hard things. Positive thinkers tend to be creative thinkers. In schools everywhere, kids are consistently told to think outside the box. That's a phrase we've had around for a while now, and for good reason. And what teachers and educators are saying when they're asking us to think outside the box is get creative with your thinking. If your one way that you know how to solve a problem isn't working, invent a new one. Don't just sit there and say it doesn't work, invent a new one. And so positive thinking is all about inventing new neural pathways so that we can think a little bit more positively and we can meet those challenges. Now, here's why this is hard, especially for teenagers. Teenagers are in this sort of unique phase of brain development, actually from middle school straight on through high school, where their limbic systems, where they, house all their emotions and reactions, and the eye rolls, that's where the eye rolls come from, is in overdrive. Okay, so the limbic system is working overtime. It's doing too much. It's taking up too much of the brain. It's being super bossy. It's kind of large and in charge. The prefrontal cortex behind the front here, which is in charge of rational thinking and decision making and logic and reasoning and all those good things that we like, nowhere near developed. And the bad news is it's not really going to be fully developed until about age 25. The good news is we can learn how to teach it along the way. So we don't have to just sit and wait for it to be fully developed. We can learn new things. So negative thought patterns are cyclical, and intrusive thoughts exist on a loop. And intrusive thoughts are scary. When kids are experiencing intrusive thoughts, and sometimes they can be just really pesky and annoying, like, I'm terrible at math. I'm never going to be good at math. I'm terrible at math. I'm the worst at math. Bad math runs in my family. We're no good at math in my family. Okay, that can be an intrusive thought. Intrusive thoughts can also be every time someone leaves the house, they might die. Intrusive thoughts can be really scary. They can be really anxiety producing. So what happens is, you have an intrusive thought. So maybe it's the math thought. I'm terrible at math. I can't do this math. It's too hard. I know I'm bad at math. Everyone knows I'm bad at math. And what happens in response to that is you feel bad. So now I'm angry. I'm frustrated. I'm annoyed that I have to keep learning math when I know I'm bad at math and I can't do math. So then we go into negative self-talk mode. I'm terrible at this. My teacher knows why is she making me do this? I'm terrible at this. And then we feel hopeless or helpless. There's no way to solve this problem. I'm just gonna have to suffer through this for the entire time I'm in school until I can go to college and choose what I want to learn. So that's an intrusive thought pattern. And it can be scary when that happens. And it can be scarier thoughts. And the hard part about that is it's hard to interrupt. So once it starts looping really quickly, it can be difficult to interrupt. So we have to really work hard to learn how to interrupt it. So before we move on to that, I want to talk about why positive thinking is so important and how it helps our kids and us, because I hope that some of you are sitting there thinking, you know what, I'm going to do this for myself too. I zoom all over the country and the world talking about parenting our kids, but I always hope in the back of my mind that some of you are thinking about yourself as well, because we all need to practice self-care and learn new things right now. That's what I think anyway. So kids who tap into positive thinking tend to feel more empowered to work through their obstacles, right? They have enhanced capability. They have better self-efficacy. They feel like they can do it. They become I can kids. That's important. They also have improved problem-solving skills because they're not afraid to start coming up with all kinds of ideas. I always joke that my 14-year-old daughter can solve just about any dilemma with tape and string, which was funny when she was 8. And at 14, sometimes I come down from working a long day and I wonder what's with all the string and the tape and what are we doing now? But she's usually solving some sort of a dilemma and it usually works out okay. So I can't get on her too much. But when kids feel like they can solve problems, they really do. They step outside of what's average and they start coming up with all kinds of ideas when we let them do it. The key is we have to let them do it. And we'll talk about that. They also experience better emotional regulation. So this is a hot topic. I don't remember when the term emotional regulation like hit the mainstream, when it left psychology and hit like everywhere so that everybody knew it. But people ask me about this all the time, and I'm only laughing because it's just like sometimes it's funny to me when psychology words become like the new word on Facebook. So people ask me all the time, how do I teach my kids to have better emotional regulation? Okay, because of that little bit about the prefrontal cortex, that's we're not going to have total emotional regulation until the 20s. So always good to keep that in mind, right? We want to set our bars appropriately, not too low, not too high. So that in mind, optimism and positive thinking help the kids realize that they can work through things, even if their brains aren't fully developed. They can learn how to cope with hard things and work through things and persist and keep trying. My 12-year-old son right now is in a battle with a Rubik's Cube. And I would say at about 8 o'clock this morning, he was ready to quit. And at 5:30 this evening, he is almost done. So, persistence, right? These are things we develop by using positive thinking. And also kids who are positive thinkers tend to have higher self-esteem and self-confidence. That's because they believe in themselves. They know that they have the ability to do stuff that's hard. So developing a positive mindset is never going to be an overnight success. It's just not. It's something that we have to work on. And like I said, sometimes you even have like a day where you're super pessimistic and you reset yourself and then you get back to it the next day, and that's okay. We're not meant to just fix ourselves all the time. We're meant to keep growing and learning. And sometimes we fall and sometimes we fail. And sometimes failures are spectacular and also we learn a lot from them. And that's a good thing. So all kids are different. There's no rule book. I'm going to give you a whole bunch of information, but there's not a rule book. Okay. So all kids are different. You know your kids best. You help them move at a pace that works for them. But modeling it really does help, I swear. Okay, so step 1 in becoming a positive thinker is that we need to have emotion evaluation tools. So I can't tell you how many kids sit on my couch for the first time at like age 12 and they know like 2 feelings. Okay, maybe it's 4. But they come in and it's like, I know happy, sad, angry. That's about it, right? All we talk about are like those 3 big ones, but there are so many emotions. And I usually have a chart near me. It's not within reach right now. There are so many emotions, so many feelings, so many shades of gray, so many things we need to talk about. The more we get into the habit of talking about all the feelings we experience throughout the day, the better equipped we are to handle them because we know what we're dealing with. See the problem, solve the problem. See, it always comes back to that. No one's happy 100% of the time. Emotional shifts are normal, totally normal. It would be weird if we never had negative emotions. How strange would that be? It would be like a weird movie. I feel like there is a movie about that. I just can't think of what it is. Anyway, so we got to learn how to evaluate our moods and understand what we're going through. A fun thing to do is a mood meter. Now there is an app for that because I know a lot of people like apps. And I like apps, actually. I'm a big technology person. I'm not going to be the person who tells you never to use technology or to take all the technology away because I don't believe that. But also what I find when I talk to my teenagers, especially about having a mood meter, is that they kind of like to make their own, either in the notes app on their phone or just like in a notebook at home because they're sick of being on their phones, believe it or not. So anyway, but the way a mood meter works is basically you assign moods to colors so that you can just kind of write out quick notes. Also, it's a good code so that if anyone ever had your phone or your notebook, they would know what you were doing. So throughout the day, you just try to track, I was red, I was yellow, I was green, I was purple, whatever your colors are. And you kind of just see like, well, how did your moods shift throughout the day? And when kids do this and teenagers do this and even adults, when they look at, a 2-week period, they start to see patterns that emerge. So like, I know that at about 4 o'clock every day, my mood starts to tank because I've probably been working back to back to back to back and I'm out of water, right? I've been sitting too much. So I start to crash. So I need to either get outside or I need to get up and move around a little bit and get some water or do something. So I'm always encouraging kids to watch for those changes because when they do that, they can figure out what they need. Once you know what your patterns are, you can start to figure out what you need. I also encourage them to keep a little trigger tracker. So if you're noticing on your mood meter that you had a lot of reds, you got, in this one, it looks like red is sad. Often kids say red is mad, but you had a lot of sad moments throughout the day. Try to take a note of like, well, what? Okay, so that was at about 12 o'clock. What was happening at 12 o'clock? I didn't have anyone to sit with at lunch. I was feeling lonely. I missed my mom, et cetera, et cetera. So you want to try to think about in terms of, you don't need like a super fancy tracker. I often ask parents to do a trigger tracker for a couple of weeks just to sort of see like where the anxiety is spiking during the day. And I always say like, this does not need to be fancy. I don't need, an Excel sheet. I'm just talking like scribble out notes. I once had a mom hand me a Starbucks napkin with a trigger tracker on it, but which gave me such a laugh because isn't that all of us really at the end of the day? Anyway, so you just want to kind of keep track of time of day, how much sleep did you have the night before? Have you been eating regularly? Are you getting any exercise? Are you drinking water? We're going to talk about water soon. But was there anything specific that happened? Is there anything, because then when you track over a couple of weeks, again, you start to see, 4 o'clock, that's Katie's crash time. Got to make sure she gets her water. Okay, so step 2 is to develop some emotion regulation tools. Now, I know you're going to tell me you're tired of hearing about deep breathing, and I have bad news, which is that we're going to talk about deep breathing. But practicing adaptive coping skills helps kids and teens learn to, tolerate their negative emotions, work through their negative emotions, and overcome their negative emotions. We don't want to dismiss negative emotions. We don't want to say, don't worry about that, or that's no big deal. We want to say, yeah, that does sound like a big deal. We want to be empathic parents who can say, I'm sorry, that sounds really hard. Let's work through this together. What kind of tools can we use to get through this hard thing together? Before I move on and start talking about that, it's just, I always say it's so important for us as parents to remember that their big deal might be a small deal to us, but we got to focus on their big deal. So if your kids are coming to you and they're saying, this is really hard for me, and you're thinking in the back of your mind, but that shouldn't really be hard for you. Like, I don't really get why that's not the right words. Those are your inside thoughts to say for later, to tell to a friend later, right? Or a sibling or somebody, partner of some sort. The outside thought that you want in the moment is, wow, that sounds really hard. Thank you for trusting me with that. How can I help? Because sometimes kids, things are hard for them that we think they already have figured out and they don't feel like they do, and that's okay. Growing up is a process. It really is. It's a process and it's ups and downs. So deep breathing, it really, I promise you, is the single best strategy to confront pretty much any negative emotion. So whether you're in a panic from anxiety, that's your best tool. Or you're super frustrated and angry and gonna blow your top, there's your best tool. Or you're feeling just even really sad, there's your best tool. Deep breathing helps us reset our central nervous systems. It's like this little mini vacation. We close our eyes, we can visualize things that make us feel good, go to your happy place. That always gets joked about in the media. That's no joke. Have a happy place that you can close your eyes and go to, and you can count on to just relax. Mine is my summer home, my summer place where I go to visit my family in the summertime. That's my happy place. So if I'm needing to do my deep breathing, I just shut my eyes and I picture myself on the beach in front of my mom's house, and that helps me center myself. So the biggest problem with deep breathing is that most people don't know how to do it properly. So we have all the apps and we have all the technology, and we have people saying, do deep breathing. And then I find over and over again that people go like this. And that's not deep breathing, that's hyperventilating. And that's actually going to make you feel even more upset because you're not actually getting the air into your system to calm down your central nervous system. So what you need to do is count in fours: in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. So it's a square. That's why square breathing works. I have to keep an eye on the time. Okay. So sometimes I go longer on this, and I'm going to try and shorten it. But so it's super easy to do square breathing. And the reason teachers teach this, a lot of teachers are teaching this now, is because it's easy for every single person at every single age to understand how to do this. So on the way up, you're going to inhale and go in for 1, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 2, 3, 4, and hold, 2, 3, 4. I usually tell people to do it 2 or 3 times. Tracing the square is actually important because that's kind of a, it feels good, right? If you do that right now, if you're doing this with me, any of you, any takers, if you're doing it, you realize that light tracing is kind of a sensory activity that kind of feels good. If you don't like to do square breathing, you can be like me and always have a stress ball. Now, see, I'm a believer that every classroom has to have stress balls for everybody. So everyone should have one at their desk, because you know why we get stressed out. It's normal to get stressed out at times. And stress ball helps you remember to squeeze in 2, 3, 4, and hold, 2, 3, 4, and out, 2, 3, 4, and hold, 2, 3, 4. Same thing 2 or 3 times. Hey, I'm telling you, it's like a little mini vacation. It calms down your whole body. Okay, mindfulness also in the spotlight right now, the last few years. And some schools have mindfulness programs in place or had them in place pre-pandemic, and some are going to get back to it, and some are scrambling and trying to figure out how they're going to do everything in like a 3-hour day. So we're being patient, and we can do this at home. So I teach kids how to take 5. Mindfulness is all about just, first of all, using your breathing, and also just centering yourself on what's around you right now, or what are some things that feel good. So the first thing that I teach kids to do, we'll just take 5 seconds, is to use their senses. So I coach them through to do, their deep breathing, and then I ask them to close their eyes, and then I say to them, okay, name one thing, open your eyes after you've done a nice big breath, and name one thing that you can see, name something you can feel, name something you can hear, and name something you can smell. So when we use our senses, it helps ground us in reality. So especially if kids are panicking or starting to just really get stressed out and frustrated and crying, I always say, first thing, put your feet on the ground. So if you're starting to panic and you feel your heart racing and you're getting really upset, put your feet on the ground. If you can stand up, stand up. If you can't, just make sure your feet are on the ground, and then say it out loud. I can see my desk in front of me. I can hear my dog barking. I can feel this chair beneath me. I can smell the ring light that's next to me. I don't know why that smells weird. Anyway, so go through it, say it out loud, because what that does is it engages the rational part of your brain while you're doing the deep breathing, and it helps you get grounded in reality. Another thing that I teach kids and teens is take 5. So take 5 deep breaths. Name 4 people who care about you. It can be anybody, mom, dad, grandma, aunt, uncle, sister, teachers, coaches, anybody. Name 4 people who care about you. Name 3 things that make you smile. I'm talking M&Ms and ice cream, just good things. Take 2 more of those big, deep breaths again, and then share a happy moment or memory from the day that, again, helps ground you in reality and just bring you back. So progressive muscle relaxation is another great tool for working out all the tension that we store in our bodies. I'm not going to go through the whole thing right now because I know I'm going to run short on time, and I want to get through everything and answer some of your questions. And please do remember to put your questions in the Q&A if you have them as I'm talking. And this is being recorded, I think they said, so you'll be able to access this again if you want to go back and see the slides again. But progressive muscle relaxation uses a combination of deep breathing and tensing and relaxing your muscles to get that tension out. And so what you would do is you do the counts: in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. But you want to start with your arms. And so you want to do all the muscle groups in your arms, from your hands all the way up to your shoulder, and you're going to squeeze, and then you do your counts, and then you let go. And then next you'd move on to your legs and your feet, and you tense the muscles, hold them while you're in, and then you let go on the exhale. And then you do your shoulders, and then you do your abs. Basically, you're working one large muscle group at a time through your body to tense and release. You can Google this to find more step-by-step guide on that, but it's super helpful, and it gets all that tension out. So there is a therapeutic element of writing. I always say writing is not therapy, but writing is therapeutic. And some kids are so sick of doing work that they don't want to write. And some kids love to write, and they'll write and write and write and write and write. One thing I suggest if you're having trouble communicating with your kids is a parent-child journal where you write notes back and forth, either in the morning, in the evening, once a day, a couple times a week, whatever it is, whenever you find time. Sometimes kids can just open up a little bit better when they're writing a note back and forth to mom or dad or grown up, whoever their grown up is in their house that's taking care of them. So that's just something to keep in mind. But, research does show that writing helps people cope with negative emotions and work through the things that they go through. So for teenagers, I often suggest doing a 3 good things journal where they just, write the 3 hard parts of the day and end with the 3 best parts of the day. Because what I say to kids all the time is even on your hardest day, even on your really super hardest day, you can probably find at least one good thing that happened. And maybe it was something that you might think is silly, like, oh, I had a brownie in my lunch or a cookie in my lunch. But maybe thinking about that cookie in your lunch also makes you think about, oh, well, my teacher gave me a compliment. And maybe thinking about the teacher giving you a compliment makes you think about the friend that smiled at you. And now we're up to 3 good things. So I always say also, we want to look for little things. We're so conditioned right now, especially here in America, where everybody's running on, in pursuit of success all the time, like from age 0 on. We're always looking for big things, right? But it's the little things. It's the little positive things that give us hope, that make us feel good. So that 3 good things journal is just find those 3 little tiny good things, those 3 little tiny rays of hope that can get you through to the next day, because hope is super powerful. Some kids will do a brain dump where they just get it all out. Some don't want to do, diary. I get that a lot from the teens. I don't write in a diary. All right. Will you write a short story? No. Will you write lyrics to a song? Yes. Great. Write some lyrics. So write your story in whatever way you want. I have kids who will write their stories into little graphic novel kind of frames. So any way that you can get those feelings out, there is a power in writing. Here's the catch. You gotta put pen to paper. Sorry, app lovers. You gotta put pen to paper to have that therapeutic element to it. I don't make the rules, I just tell you. Okay, everybody needs a relaxation toolkit. Everybody, I don't care how old you are. And yeah, you get the eye rolls from kids of a certain age, but also then they kind of think about it. They go away. So what I find with teenagers all the time, especially the ones that are prone to, oh my gosh, that'll never work, stop telling me that, is that they go away and they think about it, and then they come back and they say, oh, actually, I did come up with some things for my relaxation toolkit. So, try to make it fun, try to make it a family affair. Some kids might really enjoy listening to music when they're stressed out or anxious. Other kids are like, no, I can't have any more input. I'm actually that person, and I'm married to a musician, go figure. But if I'm on overload, I can't stand music. I need quiet, right? So some kids like to read, some will exercise, text a friend. Text a friend is good. So we're not taking away the technology all the time. Getting outside to walk the dog, just putting on cozy clothes. Sometimes just putting on cozy clothes, it really helps. Watching something on Netflix, binging a little is okay as long as we're not doing it all the time. We really need to teach kids about self-care. I want to start with boundaries because I find that nobody talks to their kids about boundaries. And I get it, because when would it come up, right? It's not the thing that comes up all the time. We're always trying to do all the things and check all the boxes. And so boundaries isn't really a box, but it's really important. Boundaries are self-care, right? Because when we set a boundary, we're saying, I need to do this for me now. No, I can't have that glass of wine tonight. You know what? I'm just too tired. Now, this is, of course, adult to adult. No, I can't go out to Starbucks one more time this week with you because I'm so behind on my homework and I just need to get it done. Learning to say no is really important. Learning that no is a complete sentence is also really important. Boundaries can be physical. No, I don't want to be touched or hugged. I don't want to hold your hand. And they can be emotional. No, I just need a break right now. No, I don't want to text right now. They can be digital. I don't want to respond to 400 texts in the group text. I don't want to have a snap streak right now. And it's hard. Kids are struggling with that because technology has brought everything into our bedrooms. And I feel this as an adult. So sometimes my heart aches for how the teenagers must feel about it because they're really invested in it. But because technology has brought everything right into our bedrooms, we get the boundaries have been blurry, right? And we sometimes don't get a break. So they don't like it when I say it, the kids and the teens, but I don't believe technology belongs in the bedroom at night. I believe the bedroom should be a sacred, relaxation space, unless one phone needs to be in there for emergencies, for grown-ups. But kids need to learn that they can live without their phones and they don't need to be checking their snaps when they happen to wake up at 3 a.m. All right, self-care is technology, taking breaks from technology and learning that you can be okay, even if you do take that break. It's okay, parents, get off Facebook for a couple of weeks. You'll see, it's good. Self-care is daily exercise. Now, exercise is boring if you're a teenager and you're not playing a sport. When you're playing a sport, it's super fun, right? And this is what happens with kids and teens, like this pandemic hit and all their sports got taken away. And they're like, well, I don't want to exercise. It's boring. It is boring, but there are fun things out there. YouTube is full of fun dance videos. Even just like Just Dance, the video game, you can get a good workout doing that. So get creative, find your ways to get some exercise because it really does reset your brain. I say all the time, exercise is for your brain. Like, forget about the rest of it. It's for your brain health. And that makes sense to kids. They can understand that. So teenagers need 7 to 9 hours of sleep. If you have younger kids, elementary school kids, and you're checking in, they need 10 to 11. I know this is bad news. I know that they say they don't need it. I know. I talk to them every week about it. I get it. They do need it. And the key to getting good sleep is really figuring out a nighttime routine that's relaxing and that works. And I know you're fighting the technology battle, and I'm with you. My heart is with you, and I feel for you. And I do know how hard it is. Keep up the good fight. You're setting boundaries. You're helping them learn to set boundaries. It's so hard. I know it's so hard, but it's so necessary because we need to get our brains back. Technology has hijacked our brains. And like I said earlier, I love it. I never say, no, don't let your kids on any social media. What I do say is balance is essential, and we model balance to teach them balance. So we have to work on ourselves. And I am for certain a work in progress. And interesting new research coming out all over the place tells us that we can, in fact, feed our moods. And I find that younger kids, especially, but even some teenagers, when they learn about feeding their moods, they get more invested in making their own food and making healthy choices. So talk about that. Talk about, how great avocados are. Talk about protein, talk about balance. Again, balance. Never take away all the treats. Treats are good. I love M&Ms. Just don't eat them all the time, right? Just mix it up with fruits and vegetables and legumes and all the good things. Fine. And also, because everybody's different, everybody metabolizes things a little bit differently. So pay attention to the foods that make you feel good versus the foods that make you crash and feel and then put more of the foods that make you feel good into your body. All right, we need to talk about step 3, which is learning to actually reframe our thoughts and retrain our brains. And they're going to cut me off soon, so I'm going to speed up. Okay, and this takes practice. So if it doesn't work once, don't come back to me and say it didn't work once. You have to practice more. I'm going to say practice more. Okay, so the first easiest way to do this is the I think, I feel, I can strategy. So like I said before, we don't want to get rid of our negative thoughts. We want to own them. We want to understand them. We want to think about them. And then we want to figure out some positive replacements. So I think is your step 1. What are you thinking? What are the thoughts that are running through your head that are kind of negative? What's happening? What do you feel because of it? What are your emotional symptoms? What are your physical symptoms? What's happening? Let's brainstorm together. So scaffolding is huge. If you don't know what scaffolding is, it's basically you teach your kid a skill, you model that skill, you talk about the skill, then you step away and you let them try the skill. And if they master it, super. And if they don't, you come back in and you go back up to helping them with it, and then you back away again. So you can up, down, scaffolding it, trying to help them learn. Brainstorming coping skills is huge. Like what would help? Would taking a walk help? Would taking a warm shower work? What would work right now to help you feel better? Flip it is another easy way to reframe your thoughts. So reframing is basically we're doing that 3-to-1 ratio. So catch the negative thought, deal with it, examine it. Where did it come from? What does it mean? Why are we saying it? We need to talk really quickly about cognitive distortions, which is a fancy way of saying thinking errors. We all have them. You might recognize ones like polarized thinking, the all or nothing thinking. I'm good at math or I'm bad at math. I'm good at science or I'm bad at science. Or catastrophic thinking, everybody hates me, I have no friends, it's all over, my life is worthless. That's catastrophic thinking. Or jumping to conclusions. You have a tiny bit of evidence, you're pretty sure you solved the crime. Usually not so much. So catch it, examine it. What is the cognitive distortion that's driving the thought? And let's deal with that. Now let's name 3 positive thoughts to outweigh that one negative thought. So if the negative thought is nobody likes me, nobody's responding to my snaps, so obviously no one likes me. That's obvious, right? You want to catch it, you want to talk about that distortion, which is, it's not obvious that no one likes you. Maybe they're busy, maybe they're doing other things. And then you want to replace it with, well, I do have friends in my class, I have friends on my team, I am fun, I am friendly, I am kind, people like me. That was more than 3. Positive reframing is taking your negative thinking and turning it into positive thinking. These are all sort of a rose by another name, honestly. I don't know why we have so many names for things in psychology. But so, if a negative thought is, this is too hard, I can't do this, a positive solution to that might be, well, I can keep working hard to solve this, like my son in the Rubik's Cube, who declared it too hard at 8 a.m., but then kept working hard to solve it. I'm not smart enough can be, I'm learning right now. I'm learning a lot right now. I'm a failure, I'm failing at everything is, I'm a work in progress, I am learning. So a big thing right now is kids are afraid of failure. Jessica Leahy wrote a fabulous book called The Gift of Failure. If you haven't read it, you should, because we need to teach kids that failure is a-okay and we learn from our failures. So a lot of kids, those stomach aches often come from the knots we tie in our own stomachs, metaphorically, because we have so much tension in there and we're getting all tied up with the things that we're worried about. And so I teach kids all the time to use their deep breathing, close their eyes, visualize that they have an actual knot in there and think about, well, what caused that knot? Why is that there? How can I start to loosen it? Where did it come from? Write your own ending. You get to write your own ending. This is the good thing about life. We think the script is written for us and we're just following the rules, but we get to write the script. We get to change the ending when we need to. A great thing to do is to create a wall of power thoughts somewhere in a bedroom, on a door, in the bathroom, anywhere your kid is a lot. Because when we see positive thoughts that we write about ourselves and we confront them every day and we look at them every day, we believe them. So I'm a great problem solver. I am a great problem solver. I know this, but if I had it on my wall, I would feel good about that. And I would smile and say, you know what, I am a great problem solver. I'm open to learning new things. I help others. I listen to others. My friends can count on me. Have your kid come up with positive things about themselves, put them on sticky notes and stick them on the bedroom door or somewhere they're going to pass through, often throughout the day, so that they have to stop and see all that positive stuff that they came up with. When we do this, when we get into the habit of practicing positive thinking and confronting positive thinking, we just get better at it. So like I said, it is a work in progress and it takes time and it's never an overnight success, but the good news is we can chip away at it little by little. I made it to the end. These are all the places you can find me. A lot of stuff, especially about the eating, the feeding your moods, all that stuff is on my Instagram account. That's where you find the most good stuff, I would say, is on Instagram. So if you're going to follow me somewhere, follow me there. I've written 4 books. I don't like to sell my books. You'll find them if you want them. I think we have some time for questions. And I saw that somebody raised a hand, but I'm going to let.
I'm back.
I'm not going to be in charge. Okay.
I'll start with, I'll read the question and you can answer.
Okay.
First one, how do you tell the difference between someone who's having trouble with anxiety and someone who is just shy?
Yeah, well, because social anxiety is a thing. That's a real diagnosis. And so that can be hard to weed out. So what I always say is, shy is normal and some kids are more introverted than others and some kids are just observers and it takes them time to warm up. A socially anxious kid is going to feel distressed when they're out trying to socialize. So you're going to see that, you're going to hear the stomach aches, you're going to get the tug on your sleeve like all the time. I got to get out of here. This is not the right place for me. How much longer are we staying? Has it been 10 minutes yet? Did I do enough time yet? When you have a kid who's really that worried that they're expressing those kinds of thoughts and they appear in distress, they're not smiling at all. They're really not engaging. They're only engaging because you're telling them you have to engage for 10 minutes. That's is kind of what social anxiety looks like. It's also totally okay for kids to be quiet and to be watchers. We always worry about that because for us as the parents, it's like, oh no, why are you the one at the park that's not playing? And that feels like, it feels like a reflection of us. It's not a reflection of you. It's okay if kids are quiet. I mean, I'm the loudest person I know right now. I was painfully quiet as a kid. My mom held me back from kindergarten for a year because she said I didn't talk enough. So, people grow into their talkativeness at different ages, and so it's okay. But if your child's in distress and they're just not feeling right and they're really starting to cry and really struggle, that's anxiety. Here's the good news about anxiety, which I forgot to say. It's the most treatable mental health issue that kids face. The most treatable. Cognitive behavior therapy works really well. DBT works really well. Play therapy works really well. All kinds of therapies work really well to target anxiety. And it doesn't have to be a lifetime. It can be short term.
Another question. My 13-year-old daughter has no motivation to do homework, chores, or even get dressed. What can I do to help her?
So it's funny that you should say that. Not funny because I think it's funny, but ironic that you should say that because I tweeted that earlier. All of my teens, 13 and on up right now, that is what in the last 2 weeks, they're all like, I have no motivation. I can't do that. I just don't want to do this anymore. Like, I don't know. I just don't want to do this anymore. So what I tell them is they've got to figure out little benchmarks for themselves. Like, give yourself a little reward. And it sounds silly, it sounds ridiculous, but when they were toddlers and it was like, oh, you used the bathroom, great, here's a lollipop, it worked, right? So I'm not a believer in charts, behavior charts and reward systems in general. I am a believer in, if I'm doing a big project and I need to get through something, I'll say to myself, okay, if I get this many pages written in the next hour, then I'm gonna, go for a run. But if I don't, I'm gonna have to put off my run until I finish it. So, set expectations for yourself, give yourself little rewards, find a new show you want to watch. Okay, when I finish this homework for the day, I get to watch an episode of this new show that everybody's talking about. Come up with little systems, because it's right now, it really is hard. That internal motivation is missing for a lot of kids right now. She's not alone. Tell her that, make sure she knows she's not alone. Check in with other parents to see, what are they doing, sometimes right now. And, I'm a believe the science, let's all follow the rules and do what we can so we can get our schools fully open. But, sometimes a kid and another kid outside at a big table in a backyard working together with masks on works. It helps them stay motivated to get that work done together, and they feel less alone. So, figure out your safe ways to make those things happen.
What's one of your favorite anxiety books for the elementary K-5 age group? One that children can read.
That children can read. Well, Wemberly Worried is a classic. That's a good one, because Wemberly does worry about absolutely everything until she learns how not to worry anymore. Let's see. Janine Halloran actually wrote, and this is not a storybook, but she wrote a great coping skills journal for kids. The Coping Skills Journal for Kids, it's called. It's got a kind of turquoise cover. Janine Halloran, you'll find her. She's the jam for coping skills. I love her. She's got a great website. She's got tons of printables that she just gives away for free. She's like the nicest person in the universe. So check her out, look her up. But she's got some good coping skills books for kids that I think are really, really great. I don't know. Sorry, I always forget. I always know, I always anticipate that question, and then the books fly out of my head. But I would be happy to email a list that they can put up on the website later.
Great, thank you. A couple more, and then we'll close up. I feel like baking could be a negative way for children that tend to overeat and are overweight. Any suggestions on this idea?
Well, it doesn't have to be baking. I mean, I always say baking because I actually happen to love baking. And you can do healthy baking. You can come up with all sorts of different, I mean, I'm not as good as the people making all these delicious gluten-free things and sugar-free things and all this stuff, but there are all kinds of ways to bake in a healthier way. But cooking is just fun. So I always say and I love cooking with my own kids. So, sourcing healthy recipes, cook the rainbow. How can we cook the rainbow every single night? Let's figure it out. Let's figure out what are all the colors that we're going to meet to get onto our dish. So it doesn't have to be baking. It can be, just cooking anything is kind of fun and it's relaxing, because One thing that's good for anxiety is we have a fancy term for it, which is mindless repetitive tasks, which is like doing the same thing over and over again. So it's knitting. That's a good one. Learn to knit. Knitting is so good for anxiety. But also like chopping. So chopping vegetables is a mindless repetitive task. Washing vegetables, stirring the soup, stirring the pot. So it could be a cooking thing. It could be knitting. It could be painting. Do some painting together. Take some, online, you get the Bob Ross on the YouTube and do some painting together. It's fun.
Next question. What is the appropriate time on social media for a 15-year-old? I asked that question because of boundaries and taking away things kids like.
It's so hard. Okay, here's the lousy answer is there's not an exact number. There's no exact perfect number. People say, oh, if they're under this age, no more than 2 hours. Well, that's all gone, right? Nobody's doing less than 2 hours anymore, especially not right now. So, I think it's times of day. I try to empower kids to figure out the point where your brain really starts to get drained. I did this with my own daughter. She's only 14, but so she set herself an Instagram shut off limit on her phone so that she only gets I don't know. She did something super low, like 20 minutes or something, but she doesn't really care enough about social media. But for other teens that I work with who are super into social media and wanting to use it all the time, they'll say to me well, sometimes I'll say, let's look at your phone and show me your screen time report, because the phones all give you a screen time report now and you can see exactly how much they did on each little thing. And I have them look at it and tell me, and they'll go, oh my gosh, I was on, Snap for 7 hours yesterday. And it's shocking to them when they see it and they start to actually read their reports. And then they'll go, okay. So we'll say, well, what's realistic? If you're using it 7 hours a day, whoa, that's way too much. But you're not going to magically go down to 1 hour overnight. So let's say that 3 hours is your new target for now, and we'll see how that goes. And they can learn to set those boundaries. But part of it is empowering them to really investigate how much they're using it and to figure out how that affects their brains, how it affects just their lethargy and their overall, how they're feeling physically. And then they need replacements because they're bored right now and there's not a lot to do, and they are socializing on social media primarily. So, you can the old people, we text, they think that's funny. They think that's old people stuff, texting. So, they use Snap like we use text message. So you have to take that into account, that is how they're, connecting with their friends, but also, challenge them to look at well, how many of those snaps were just memes that you didn't need to send 75 of, and maybe you could have just sent 20. So helping them figure out their own boundaries is really important.
So there's a couple more, and then I think we'll close it up. How do you deal with a child that is not talkative or doesn't express himself? How about the negative emotions that will end up with frustration and yelling and throwing or breaking things?
No, the internalizers are hard because they haven't figured out yet how to get their feelings out. Some of that is dependent on age. If they're in elementary school, something like a worry box can really work for them to just have a place where they write down how they're feeling throughout the day and just shove it in there and shove it under their bed, and then they don't have to think about it until later. Or they don't, they can share it with you or they don't have to. But often, with kids like that, often what I do is I do something physical with them. So research shows that people are more likely to talk and share bigger feelings when they're not actually face to face. So side by side is less threatening because you're not looking in the eyes, you're not seeing the immediate reaction, you're not worrying about judgment. So, doing things and again, depends on your kid, but if you have a kid who will shoot hoops with you, I can't tell you how many kids I've shot hoops with in therapy over the years, because having that physical thing to do takes away some of the pressure. It just takes some of the edge off, and then you can start asking little questions and sort of build up. Don't come at them with big questions. Come at them with small questions like, oh, I noticed you seemed a little frustrated after school. I wonder what happened. Did anything happen? Curiosity and listening are our two best tools in our kits as parents. I always say follow the 80-20 rule for listening. Listen 80% of the time, speak 20% of the time, and make that 20% full of curiosity so that you're asking a lot of just gentle questions to kind of keep the conversation flowing. you know, just like you don't like it when you try to vent, you know, when you try to vent to someone and then either they hijack your feed by telling you all their problems or they start yelling out solutions that you didn't ask for and you get irritated, you feel more irritated. Well, kids are the same way, especially the internalizers. So usually 9 out of 10 times when they're coming to you, they're not looking for you to solve the problem. They're just wanting to get the problem out. And then if they're not coming to you, it kind of becomes a system of checks and balances where you're checking in, you're kind of mentioning what you see. Oh, I see that you're looking a little sad. Like, is everything okay? Is there anything you want to talk about? No. Okay, I'll check again in 20 minutes. I'll be back a little later and check on you again. So just keep checking in, don't give up, and just try to do the, you know, walking or throwing a football or throwing, you know, whatever it is your kid likes to do physically to just kind of break up some of that tension.
So we've kind of reached our hour and we're going to finish up. I'm going to turn it over to Beth for a few minutes. Thank you so much, Katie.
Thank you.
I know we didn't get to some of the questions and we can maybe post some answers to that after the fact, and we can watch it on our recording. So I'm going to turn it back over to Beth.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks for all that content, Katie. Great information. So we've had a few people ask about where they can get a copy of the PowerPoint and the recording. So this was recorded tonight. It will be on our 33rd District PTA website in a couple of days, and the PowerPoint is already there. So it's 33rd District PTA Community Diversity and Health tab, and then it's under the Connecting Community Speakers series. So you can access it there. And then I just wanted to share, we have an upcoming program. So we want to make sure people know about that. That's going to be next Thursday night, March 4th, viewing our schools through a DEI lens. And then we are on social media. So we do look forward to you following us and commenting on our different programs. And finally, when you log off, there will be a survey. We are very much looking forward to hearing from you about your thoughts, feedback. Please comment. And thank you very much for attending tonight. Thank you, Katie, for your time, for this great information. And we'll see you all next time. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.